Good evening. From the campus of Gardner-Webb University in Boiling Springs, North Carolina, this is Web Connections, a forum that tonight will address the mass media in American society, from fake news to Twitter politics and beyond. My name is William Downs, president of Gardner-Webb University. And way back in the 1980s when I was a college student, I majored in political science, but I also had a minor in journalism. The most influential book I read my freshman year was All the President's Men by Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein, which told the true story of how two newspaper men from the Washington Post exposed corruption and cover-up in the White House and ultimately brought down the Nixon presidency. 30 years later, I had the opportunity to host a campus visit by Bob Woodward and to hear firsthand his stories from a lifetime of history-changing journalism. I've always been impressed by the power of the pen and the tenacity of those who want to discover the truth. I grew up in Raleigh, North Carolina during a time when there were two newspapers delivered to the bottom of your driveway each and every day, the News and Observer each morning and the Raleigh Times each afternoon. Like so many papers, that afternoon paper, the Raleigh Times, dwindled and ultimately disappeared. I've watched a lot of changes in the media over the years, the demise of print and the rise of digital, the passing of society's most trusted news anchors, Walter Cronkite, David Brinkley, John Chancellor, Max Robinson. I've watched the supposed advent of fake news. I've watched our media struggle to make sense of a global pandemic, of wars in the Middle East, and of discontent in our nation's streets. You know, we need the media. A democratic society needs access to good information. Without it, our system may break down. In fact, without it, our system will break down. So we know that the media matters to us in some very real ways. But the interaction of today's society with the media is quite different than the interactions our parents had with the media or their parents before them. That's why we've assembled a panel of experts here tonight to help us make some sense of these changing media matters. So without any further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our panel. My immediate left is Emma Way. Emma is Deputy Managing Editor of the Axios Local News Initiative, where she oversees teams of reporters in 14 cities, soon to be 25 cities, we understand, across the United States. Before that, she served as editor of Axios Charlotte, formerly Charlotte Agenda, and as editor-in-chief of Charlotte Magazine. She's a native of Delaware, but she's lived in Charlotte for the past 6 years. Please welcome Emma Way.
Thank you.
TJ McCulloch is a 2007 Gardner-Webb alumnus. He's market president and publisher at Charlotte Business Journal, received a degree in business administration with an emphasis in marketing, and played on the Running Bulldogs men's basketball team. He's a native of Chipley, Florida. McCulloch began working for the American City Business Journals, the ACBJ, in 2008 as a circulation marketing representative at the Sports Business Journal. He was promoted to circulation sales representative in 2010 and then account sales manager. He joined the Charlotte Business Journal in December 2013 as an advertising account executive, was later promoted to advertising director. Welcome home, TJ.
Thank you, President Downs.
Next on our panel, Beatriz Guerrero is education reporter for the Gaston Gazette here in Gaston, North Carolina. She is of Puerto Rican and Spanish descent, whose first language is Spanish. She attended Johnson C. Smith University and recently obtained a Master of Arts in Journalism at Northeastern University in Boston. Outside of the Gazette, she writes in a blog called Curled Crown, where her previous work and opinion pieces can be found. Ms. Guerrero, thank you so much for being with us here tonight.
Thank you.
And finally, we have Mr. Ken Lemon, an award-winning journalist with WSOC-TV in Charlotte. He's the current vice president of broadcast for the National Association of Black Journalists, the NABJ, an organization committed to promoting diversity in the media. For 23 years, Mr. Lemon has been the WSOC-TV Western Bureau chief. He's earned an Edward R. Murrow Award, 3 Emmy Awards, 2 Associated Press Awards, and 2 Radio, TV, Digital News Directors Association Awards. He started in journalism At the early age of 13, writing for a local teens magazine in Wilmington, North Carolina. An alumnus of UNC Wilmington, he was student body president, served on the UNC System Student Government Association, working for students at all 16 state-supported universities. He also earned several academic and leadership honors, including Minority Student of the Year. Mr. Lemon is member of the inaugural class of North Carolina Scholars and served as governor's page while studying at New Hanover High School in Wilmington, North Carolina. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Lemon. Okay, we're going to start with a series of questions from me. We're going to make sure that we leave time, most importantly, for questions from the audience and interaction with the panel. But I'd like to learn a little bit more about each of you and your pathway to the present. So let's start with a little autobiography. For each of you, what was the greatest inspiration for you to get into the information and media business? Was it some event? Was it some mentor? Was there some icon, some heroic, towering figure who provided inspiration? No, unfortunately, you drew the short straw. You're sitting closest to me. So, Emma, what was your inspiration?
I really don't have one. My path to journalism started during a road trip with my family. We would go on really, really long road trips across the country. And I've always been the type of person to stress when I was in elementary, middle school, high school, like I had to have my whole life already figured out. So my mom, trying to help me not stress about me not having my entire next few decades planned, she told me to list out all of the topics that interest me. And the list was really, really long. And so she suggested maybe I be a writer or a journalist where I can cover a bunch of different things. And I just latched onto that for the rest of my life so far. So no figure per se, but that was
Thank you, Mom. I mean,
Thanks, Mom.
That's a great one. Yeah. Very good. So that's the life of someone who grows up in Delaware, always trying to get out of Delaware, right?
Very basically.
All right. TJ, inspirations.
So I would say my parents, because the reason is I thought I was going to play basketball forever. I didn't go to any career fairs, any job fairs. My senior year, I'm from Florida. I was with my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, with our 3 boys. And I'll never forget my parents or my mom give me a call like, hey, you got to go find a job or you're going to have to come back home. So with that being said, I kind of stumbled upon the media business, had a buddy that told me about a position. And the inspiration when I started taking it seriously is realizing I came up on the business side. So I was seeing the revenue streams created, selling to people, talking to people about why they should buy this product that is being produced by these journalists, and just seeing the blood, sweat, and tears that go into it and the dedication. So it really clicked after about 4 years of me sitting on the job and just answering phone calls, not really taking it seriously. And from there, I really had a passion behind it, and it just kind of ignited a fire. So again, I would say my mom making that one phone call, because I certainly didn't want to go back to Chipley, Florida and live in my parents' house. So
Wrote for the parents. Beatrice.
For me, it would have to be the struggle of learning English from scratch. I moved to the U.S. mainland from Puerto Rico when I was 12. And they don't really teach you English like that in Puerto Rico. I mean, they do, but it's like any other language class. Like, you learn what you can, you learn what you cannot, and whatever. So it was a struggle for me to learn the language. That was when I was like learning how to write in Spanish, and now I had to learn how to write in English, and it was just too much. And I remember how much effort I put into learning English and passing my English class, and I just noticed that I loved writing, and my teacher kind of noticed that for me, my DECA teacher, who she may now rest in peace. And I grew up in a small town in Mississippi, and she got me an interview to write for the local paper in my town, which was the Press Registered. And I remember I was 16, and I was just like, oh my God, I'm out here, writing. And it just kind of stuck, because journalism does make a difference everywhere, and I just wanted to be part of that impact.
Great. So, Ken, you start at age 13 What led you at that early age to
Well,
be?
there was a program. I really enjoyed writing. There was a program available, and I really wasn't interested in journalism. It was print, and I think if you know print, you know it. If you know radio, you know it. If you know television, you know it. And I did all three of those. I did a TV internship, but really in high school for me, took one of those strange aptitude tests, and they sat down and they took a look at all the things that you liked, and then they spit out a bunch of jobs for you, and one of them was journalist. And I laughed. And here I am. And now the world is laughing at me, I guess. But that was it. And my inspiration was when I had my first job as a journalist, working behind the scenes, was watching the other people really get into their craft, watching and really kind of learning and absorbing from everyone, and then understanding how this thing impacts people's lives. And that was my inspiration.
So inspiration doesn't guarantee success, but you're all sitting here tonight because you've been successful in your various fields. What was the best training that led to your success? Was it formal training? Was it the kind of training that a Gardner-Webb can offer these students through a journalism major or minor, or was it baptism by fire? Was it immersion and learning on the job? Who wants to jump at that? Emma, reach for
I'll
the
go for
microphone.
this.
There you go.
My college didn't have a journalism major or minor. I actually begged them so much that they started it the year after I left, and I've been involved ever since. But they didn't have that, so it was definitely more of baptism by fire for me. I worked for my college newspaper, worked really closely with the advisor. I told her the second week before I even submitted my first article that I wanted to be editor-in-chief, and she kind of like laughed at me but kept working with me for over those years, and I did achieve that goal. And from there, it just was kind of like, I don't know what else I'm going to do. This is what I really care about doing. So I pushed myself to find a job after I graduated without going to journalism school. But yeah, it was just a lot of trial and error and working with really, really good editors. I got very lucky working at Charlotte Magazine. I think magazine editors, if you really want to work on writing, will really take the time to go the extra mile to strengthen what you have already. So that really helped.
What do you say to a university that doesn't have an active school newspaper?
Do you guys not have an active school
Don't.
newspaper? Oh no. Well, you need to get one. I mean, I think it has to come up from the students having a real interest in it as well. But I would say that if since that doesn't exist, go out and work with local publications. A lot of them are offering remote internships. Maybe not even in Charlotte, but especially right now, I feel like you guys have a really unique opportunity to go out and get some real experience. I know my background at Charlotte Magazine, we often took college students like myself as freelance fact checkers. That's how I got started. So looking for those kind of jobs that just get your foot in the door, where you can talk to some editors and maybe send them some writing now and then. Don't annoy them too much with too many words, but I think this is a great time to start, where everyone is already looking for remote workers and they're kind of desperate for some extra set of hands.
Well, and you should get a newspaper here. I would truly, because a lot of people that we hire for our journalists and reporters are out of University of Georgia. They have a great school newspaper, and UNC Chapel Hill. Obviously, they have a great journalism school as well. But coming back to Gardner-Webb, and it's kind of two pieces. So with the position I'm in, so I oversee the entire organization. So I do the month-end financials, and that's where my business background definitely helped. And I always joke with our corporate accountant every month. It's C's get degrees. I took like 4 accounting classes, and I think I all got C's. They were great classes. I think A's and everything else, but accounting was kind of my downfall, and we just have an ongoing joke about that now. But going back to the trial by fire, I had a really good mentor, and he runs the Denver Business Journal now. And the biggest thing is to find someone, kind of what Ken mentioned, is seeing someone doing their craft and doing it very well, someone that you want to do but put your own spin to it, and someone that'll invest the time to take you under their wing. That is what Kevin did for me. It wasn't all great. I kind of relate it to a coach here. It's they're going to get on to you when you're not doing the right things because they want you to get better, but they're also going to praise you when you're doing the correct thing. So that mentor was huge for me with the success in my career, and I mean, that's one of the key attributes that I would say that propelled me to where I am today.
I majored in communications when I was on my undergrad, and what they taught you there was how to do radio and how to edit videos, photos, the whole communication spectrum. And we did not have a concentration in journalism, which at the time I was like, perfect, because if a paper does not hire me, or if I don't work for the media company that I wanted to work back then, which was BuzzFeed, then I can always rely on this other set of skills that I learned throughout my journey in undergrad. Then I majored in, then I got my master's in journalism, and oh boy, it was very, very, very rigorous. It was very serious. They expected us to find a story, get 2 to 3 sources, and then, take all the pictures that you can in like 2 days, which is, you don't get that much of that long of a deadline when you're actually on the field. And so I just felt like I was really, really working for a media company, but I was just getting my master's. And I just had the opportunity to learn from professors who taught part-time at Northeastern, but their real jobs were GBH, Boston Globe, the local news there. So I had great mentors that shaped me to be the writer that I am today.
Most influential training, Ken?
Yeah. So, really, it is failure. It's failure and growth. So if you've ever done anything in your life that you just failed at and then still wanted to do it the next day, then that's what you should do. And that's it for journalism. And those failures taught me, and that's everything. So I have during college, I worked at a shoe store, and my manager at the shoe store he and I are still Facebook friends, and we'll still message, and I'll still tell him, that thing you told me back in the stockroom, I'd use that. And the way that I approach people in the field is exactly the way that we were taught to approach people in the shoe store, and treat every person that buys a shoe from you like they're going to come back tomorrow with those shoes in hand. And you better had satisfied them or be able to satisfy them again. And a lot of that is being willing to step out and say, this is what I want to do. Even though I'm not quite 100% sure how to do it, I'm going to learn something. I'm going to take a step. And if I fail, I look for the opportunity to grow, because no failure is complete if you find a way to grow out of it. And that's it. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter where you do it. I did so many other things before I did TV, but everything I failed in there brought some growth into television.
That's a great message. Thanks. Let's move from autobiography to your professional observations. We talked in the intro about changes in the media landscape. What's the biggest change that you've witnessed in your particular field, let's say in the last decade? And do you think that change has led to a healthier media environment or to one that's in greater distress? And we don't have to go this sequence, just anybody who.
Yeah, I'll jump in first with that. So for the Business Journal, it's a little unique for us. We're straight business-to-business publication. I like to call it the boring business news, but it's very important. Individuals we're talking to are C-level executives on a daily basis. But the past 10 years, and I think we're all going to have a lot of things in common, but especially the outlets that we're in. But it's the way consumers now consume their media. In the past, yes, we're still a print publication, but we're a huge digital media publication as well. For us, we're still making money on print. That's why it's hard for us to let it go. The juice is still worth the squeeze, even though I see how much it costs to print every single week. But with that being said, the biggest thing for us is we publish a morning and afternoon edition newsletter every single day. And the reason we did that is because the way our consumers read their news. Meaning, we're going to send you an email at 9 o'clock in the morning. We're going to send you an email at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. But these are just quick hitters. So if you're a busy business person, you're just looking truly at what is going to affect your own professional and personal life. And then we're going to do our print publication on Fridays, where they can have a deeper dive. Because we ask our audience, what do you want from us? And they said, we still like that physical copy sitting in our house. We like to put our phone down and just pick it up, kind of, I hate to say, like a cup of coffee. It's it's just natural to them because we have an older audience, obviously. But with that being said, I would say for us, it's the way, what I've seen is the way people read their media, whether it's through social media, through digital, and a little print here and there.
By far, it's social media because social media is just a brand new landscape. It has taught people how to consume news differently, and they no longer wait. So it's to me, there's no coincidence that right after social media really took off, that so many media companies decided to do apps, and those apps would deliver you quick updates. And those updates, most of them come in the form of headlines that don't go a whole lot much further than tweets. And a lot of people will read that portion of it and believe they understand. And so it is now turning people who are social media users into viewers. And that's a little bit more difficult, but it's a lot easier to reach people. We're finding through social media than always, through the traditional channels because people aren't consuming the product, much like with print. In the same way, people don't sit down and watch television all day long, and so they don't see our teases during the day. They do other things. So we got to be on Facebook, and we got to be on Instagram, and we got to be on Twitter, and we got to be on Snapchat, and we got to be on Tumblr, and we got to be on TikTok and anywhere you are to make sure that you know we exist.
I think just in general, the biggest thing I've noticed is readers' attention spans are just much shorter now than they were a decade or two ago. I mean, if you think about how fast you might swipe on TikTok, I do it too. Like each of those are only 7 seconds, or at least that's how it started, and now they're longer. And I barely have the attention span to last a minute anyway.
I'm sorry, what's TikTok?
And so, everyone's on their phone. Everyone's attention span is shorter. They're not going to sit down for a story. People only stay on a web page for a minute or less. So they're never getting to the bottom of a story that's 3 minutes long. So I also think that there's a huge emphasis on newsletters, specifically newsletters and digital media designed for mobile viewing, which is essentially what Axios' whole mission is.
Personally, as a rookie reporter, I would say content back when I was a teenager, not too long ago. It would be just the impact of there was like an earthquake somewhere and everyone would be like, wow. And now it's like you have to be very meticulous with what you put out there because not everyone cares about what's really going on out there. And if they do, they need to see it in a certain way where you're not going to create panic. And I think that one of the biggest challenges that I have encountered while being a reporter is how to grab my readers' attention with the content that I am putting out there. It could be about just being super erratic here, but a volcano exploding. You have to make sure that you put it in a way where that volcano exploding will be will be super interesting for people to read, although it's a volcano exploding. But I will say that it's the content that you put out there is very challenging because people want to see good news, people want to see bad news, but at the end of the day, news is news. So you have to make sure that you know what you're writing and how you can captivate your audience attention.
Now, each of you studiously avoided the second part of my question, which was, what does this mean for the health of the media today? So I'm going to push you a little bit more. Walter Cronkite was quoted as saying that the profession of journalism ought to be about telling people what they need to know, not what they want to know. Now, if we go back to Ted Turner and the invention, the advent of CNN and 24-hour news and infotainment, have we abandoned a professional obligation by erring on the side of entertainment and telling people what they want to hear rather than what they need to know?
I don't think we abandoned. I think we just followed where people are. And that's really what's happened. So there was a time in our lives when everybody lived in an area. Like you grew up in the town that your parents grew up in, that their grandparents grew up in, and the same general area. Well, the world is bigger, and social media has made it even bigger. And online and digital has made it even bigger. And so it no longer, the water main down the street, which was huge years ago, and everybody wanted to know why the city didn't do this, why, is not always as impressive as what's happening in New York. Whatever is happening. And quite honestly, it may well be the Super Bowl halftime show is more interesting than what you're reporting on tonight to the people who are your consumers. And so there is a duty to make sure that we don't abandon what people desire to have without abandoning what people need to have. And so there's a tricky balance that you have. So we still bring you, and this is the interesting thing that social has done also. For television, it's pushed us into enterprise and investigative so that you're getting a little bit more content, a little bit more time in those areas, even though we're now also telling you a little bit about the breakup with Kim Kardashian, which we may never have reported on before, or something else happening here. What I think today was the big thing is Simone Biles' engagement. Almost everybody's going to report that. In years past, that may not have been. Yeah. So
I think working at a hyperlocal publication, we've always kind of strayed away from necessarily like national entertainment stories. Of course, those don't have as much relation to our local readers, but we definitely think about what a reader wants every day. Like readers first is our ultimate mission. Those are the people we think about. Like those are our bosses, truly. So for me, I think sometimes journalists write for themselves and they write stories that they want to write because it makes them feel good. And, they spend a lot of time interviewing people and maybe that story doesn't have as big of an impact as it could if they had spent the time talking to the readers about what they might want in a day. So I think you may have seen, Charlotte Agenda's transition to Axios Charlotte's always been very focused on lifestyle. While we definitely have news and we, cover a bunch of different breaking news stories every day, we've definitely leaned on the lifestyle end because that's what we found that a lot of readers want from us. They want they have they want their local media to answer questions for them. They want to know where they should live in Charlotte. They want to know where they should eat in Charlotte, and we definitely saw a gap in that coverage. So that's where our focus has always been. I think in general, local media is still doing the best job that they possibly can with tackling hard news, giving readers what they need and what they want sometimes. But certainly resources have suffered, and I think that's what we're probably seeing.
And kind of what Emma said, but just looking at the national level, obviously the Business Journal, we're hyper local focused on business to business news, the 16 county region. Cleveland County is one of those regions as well. But, I would say the biggest thing is media, the respected media certainly haven't abandoned that. I think there's just so many outlets out there now. And I always just say, check your sources. To put it in comparison, you have all your friends. You have that one friend that you might go to them for a good rumor, but 60% of the time it might not be true. 40% of the time it might be. But it's, it's kind of like, I look at it as a diet. That's the Twinkie. That's the high calorie. Like you'd like to get that sometime. But then you have, your chicken and your broccoli. You have the friend that's going to shoot it, tell you how it is. You might not want to hear it sometimes, but you're going to, get the facts from them. So when it comes to the higher level, like national media, regional media, make sure you check your sources because I know all four up here, certainly four respected media outlets, but there's just so many out there. And then going back to the local level, for us, my favorite thing is when I get calls, not even to say doing really good on coverage, it's when you get the high-level executive that is upset because maybe, hey, that story was fair, but next time, maybe go a little bit easier. I like that because, hey, it's getting down to people are reading this. It's affecting people in a certain way, whether it's for better or for worse, and we're not a pay-to-play publication. So for us, it is truly what the reporters put out to that. So again, check your sources when it comes to that as well, how you're consuming your media.
I'm sure that's a pretty easy question too. And you're just like, nah, we're not going to go easy. Sorry.
Yeah. They're fun. Keep me up at night sometimes.
And I think the sad reality is that at least 90% of those people will not check their sources. I mean, you get this massive proliferation of sources of so-called information, and people don't necessarily corroborate in a way in which we used to. So let's have some fun here, folks. Let's tackle the concept of fake news. What does fake news mean to you? Certainly that's been a hot topic in recent years? And then the follow-up question on what does fake news mean to you? If somebody were to visit the United States and come directly to you and say, I need an unbiased source of accurate information about what's going on in this country, where would you tell them to go for that information?
Can you repeat that question again, the last part?
Yeah. If a visitor to the United States comes in and they said, you got all these channels, all these newspapers, all these media outlets, where do you recommend that I go to get unbiased, accurate information about what's going on in your country? Because we used to think we knew where we could go for that information. I, oddly enough, found myself watching BBC America because I couldn't find TV news that I could trust. Fake news, what does it mean to you?
To me, I feel like this may be an unpopular opinion, but I feel like when it comes to news, I think that fake news is anything that you put your personal opinion on. We're journalists. We're here to tell you the news, the facts. It's something that I learned when I was in school that I will never forget is no one cares about your opinion when you're telling the news. It's what is happening, not what you think is going to happen, vice versa. And I know that it's tempting because we want to, we have strong opinions as journalists. We're very opinionated, at least I am. So I think that when it comes to somebody who will come to the U.S. and ask me what would be reliable, first of all, it depends. That's something that I love about local news is the fact that we're, at least for me, I'm very factual. This is what's happening. Whatever you think about it, that's your business. But in the end of the day, this is what's happening, whether you like it or not. What you do with that information is totally up to you. I think that one of the issues of why the media is being so mistrusted is all these shows and programs where they acting like they're telling you the news. But then I think that it's just no one cares what you think. Just say what you need to say so people are aware of what's happening around you and so people don't get the wrong idea of what you're trying to say. So
I want to take that second one first because that one's the one that make me kind of clutch my pearls. And I think Emma kind of hit on this. One thing is access is ridiculous now. I mean, it's ridiculous. How many of you right now, I'm just sitting up here and my Apple Watch is going off, and I probably had about 4 or 5 updates. Some of it is news, some of it is other stuff. When you start to tell people, where do I go for news? It's what do you want? It really is what do you want, right? Because it used to be that you came to the top 3 every night at 6:30, and we gave you what we thought you should have. And now you don't have to have that. You can get more. I mean, these 2 individuals are telling me they're producing newsletters, I assume, on top of the regular news that you produce. So even within what you guys do, there's a variation of the kind of information that you can receive at a different time. So there's so much out there. What I tell people to do when it comes to, I say, sit down, listen to it. If it is factual, if you feel that it's factual and it's not opinion-based, consume it, but be very cautious about what you consume. It is almost a buyer beware. It is, going to McDonald's and reading all of the ingredients before you consume so that you know what you get. And we have to do that now because there's so many outlets that it's hard now to distinguish what's real and what's not.
We'll have
and
to
there
apologize
is still
to McDonald's for that.
Yeah, there is still genuine fake news, and we know what happened after the alleged fake news. There are still outlets out there that will produce clickbait information that is just utter lies, just so they can get numbers up and they can make money off of that. So, yeah.
Fake news, the term to me is in general, I think more of a talking point than reality with most publications you'll find, especially on a local level. I think that all of you guys in this room, you grew up with computers, you grew up with technology. So, be smart, look at a website. Does it look legit? Do the headlines, are they obviously clickbaity, or are they just saying the facts? I think that that's, up to each individual to decipher. I wish it wasn't that way, obviously. I think that if someone came to the United States, I would really encourage them to subscribe to local publications. depending on where they're going to be. Obviously, if they're traveling around the U.S., that's a little bit trickier, but fortunately, we're going to be in 25 markets this summer. So I would recommend Axios Local. Each newsletter is produced daily, and it's our core product. So that is where we start every day, and it takes about 3 minutes to read each one. But in general, I think beyond what we've seen in election cycles with hackers specifically like targeting U.S. Readers with fake news, I don't think that you'll actually see much fake news from your local publications, if at all.
And I was going to say local too. I mean, because we go to the national level, it truly is. It's tough to decipher. And what Ken said in that question, Dr. Downs, that's a tough hitting question of what I'd recommend. And honestly, for me, I would say, it's sad. It would be the BBC as well, and from a national level. But going back to what I said is check the sources. No, there's not a prince that has $25,000 for you if you send them $2,000 first. It's most people are smart and they know the stuff that is not real to begin with, and those clickbait articles. But if you were coming, I would say definitely, get involved with the local news scene, with what's going on, because these are the individuals plugged into that local area, that region. And if you look at it, and what they teach you in journalism school, and even on the business side, is there's journalistic integrity. Like, you're looking for speed, accuracy, and also, the integrity that you're putting into this with your sources, your trusted sources, what you're putting out, making sure it's factual. So for us, I'm just speaking to us personally, that's what we hold our journalists to. And if there's anything that ever, that would be on the editor, that ever was published without it being fact-checked by multiple sources, that would be a tough conversation to have, but it would be had very, very quickly and be dealt with.
I want to add one more thing into that too, because so much has really changed. Like, everybody is doing a portion of the news game right now. So there are documentaries that are coming out on Netflix that actually have huge impact on people's lives. And some of it is really good work. Podcasts that are changing the way we view things, the way we view issues, the way we view situations, individual or what have you. And so many people are doing this, but the real litmus test. And so I want to push back just a little on the idea that local has it and has it right. I think we do a better job than anyone else, but I certainly see other people out there doing a really good job at informing, and some of them really good in doing it in a clever way to reach you without being completely tongue-in-cheek or false, which is some of the things that I've seen, but being able to meet you where you are and bring you into the story so that you don't feel like you're coming to my house to be delivered the story the way I want it. So now you can actually get, news in a different content, in a different fashion that is factual, that is strong, that is fair.
I also will say, look at the byline. If there's a real human behind that byline, they're not going to risk their integrity just to spew fake news. So, I live in Charlotte. I care about the community. Journalists might get something wrong every now and then. They might misspell a name. They'll run a correction. But I think that if someone is really putting their face, their name behind what they do, they're proud of it. They want you to read it. And I think that there's a level of integrity there when you're willing to, own up to what you put out there every day. It's scary.
But you will all agree that the media have taken a pounding in the last couple of presidential elections, correct? I mean, so there's a mass of American society out there that struggles with trust and confidence, right or wrong.
That's actually
You're right.
right. Yeah.
But I also think too that you have a lot more people who have the opportunity to share information, and that's fooled some people into believing that what we do is easy, and it's not. You can, if you'd like to, stand up in this room and tell people whatever it is that you think on your mind based on your opinions off of a small piece of fact. We cannot do that. Litmus test is very different. And because of that, that can get us in some very hot water, but it holds us to the truth. It keeps us from standing up with a small kernel of information and creating a story that may not impact anyone, may not change any lives, and may not be factual. But that's some of what's happening. And let me add this too, because people do think this. Clickbait is not easy. Nobody knows exactly what clickbait is. You can write every catchy headline. I have done some things that I went, Everybody's going to love this story. This is wonderful. This is phenomenal. This affects so many people on a grand level. And I still have people walking up to me, hey, I remember that story you did that made CNN about the ghost at the Lincoln County courthouse. I go, really? That made CNN? We don't know what people are going to latch on to. We can guess, but guarantee you, if you're chasing that and you're doing what we do, you're probably going to fail a lot.
I also wanted to add that as a journalist, I do take full accountability of like the things that are happening. I believe that the journalism world can do a much better job at building trust towards readers, but I also feel like as consumers, we need to be very careful of what we trust and what we don't. A lot of people, especially young people, we get our news from social media. Like, I bet almost everybody here sees anything on Facebook that Michael Jordan died, and you're gonna click on it right quick. And then you have to like really ask yourself whether this is worthy or not, because they write it as an actual news story. And so the problem is that a lot of people think that everybody wants to be a journalist, but they don't want to go through the same training. I'm not saying you need a PhD or a master's to be a journalist, but you do have to have some sort of like ethical training to be able to inform. Like, what you put out there is going to affect so many people. And a lot of people do not realize it. A lot of people think, oh, I'm just putting in a story and then we're good and nothing happens. No, I have people that call me from stories that I did like months ago, and I'm like, you saw that? I can't even find that anymore. So I think that as consumers, we need to be very careful of social media. Social media is not a reliable news source. Like even CNN can be a little bit tricky to trust sometimes, but I think that we need to be very careful, check bylines, check sources, and make sure that what we're being fed is indeed the truth.
All right, so let us try to sneak in one more question here that may tee up our opportunity to have some interaction with our audience here. We do have a journalism major and a journalism minor here at Gardner-Webb, and I'm hoping and believing that some of the students in the audience with us this evening are part of one of those programs. Can you each tell us what some of the hottest trending jobs now and in the foreseeable future might be for this next generation of aspiring journalists?
I was just going to say what I'm seeing, and I'm going to go twofold. I'm going to do one on the business side and one on the journalistic side, so content creation. Content is king. What we're starting to see is companies, blue chip companies. So for us, native advertising is huge because they want to be on a respected website with the business news, but have their own voice, and we label it sponsored content so we don't trick them that it's, editorial content. With that being said, there's companies, whether it's Bank of America, Duke Energy, Fortune 500 companies that have their own content creation team, not a communications team. It's different. It truly is content creation. And these are six-figure jobs. I mean, we lose, I've had one or two really good reporters get recruited away, especially our commercial real estate reporters, to Crescent Communities or, a marketing agency creating this content. And it just depends on what you want. But I would say that is a huge piece. Content is king. Who's housing the content? Who's creating the content? And then on the business side, because that's what I came up in, media sales. I mean, there is a lot of money to be made in media sales. And, I didn't know that coming out. Like I said, I was just trying to find a job. And that's what I gravitated towards, when you can create revenue streams, different opportunities for advertisers to get in front of your readers with that message. So it's two different things, but I would end with content is king. Content creation jobs are here to stay.
I think newsletters are obviously really having a moment right now. I think like pretty much every publication I know of in Charlotte has a newsletter, and finding out ways to make those have exclusive content, have some voice, make them exciting. I think that'll go a really long way if you have any of those type of skills entering the market, entering the job market as you graduate. I think also being on the cutting edge of social media is really huge. So how does a newspaper use TikTok? Like, I mean, only kind of the Washington Post has perfected that as what I've seen so far, or not perfected. No one's perfect, but they're using it pretty actively. We've tried as well, and having some fun doing it. So I think TikTok might be a option, or whatever the next thing is. creating more trust on social media, I think is going to be really huge from what we've heard from people here today. And I think that you'll see a lot more investment in smaller local publications that are very startup-y. So not even just in Charlotte, but in other markets, you might see some more nonprofit publications starting up, more membership-based, where it's reader-funded revenue popping up. So I would keep an eye on some of those smaller places, because that might be a really good way to start your career as like a bigger fish in a small pond and really grow with a company as it might grow really fast, or maybe that's a great stepping stone to an even bigger publication.
Um, I personally think that more opportunities within local news. I think that the worst thing that you could have said to me 5 years ago when I would say that I want to be a journalist is like, "Oh, no one reads the newspaper anymore." And it would just really, really, really grind my gears, because you gonna want to know what's happening out there. But as young journalists, I want you to know that it is hard out there, even with a journalism degree. Like, I have a whole master's. I got it this summer, and I cannot begin to tell you how many obstacles I went to like get the job that I have now. And I live in Charlotte, so it's a 30-minute commute every single day. The point is that if there's not a job out there for you, make it. There is so many companies out here that have started out with a passion. The reason why I have a blog is because I wanted to be able to write whatever I wanted to write whenever I wanted. And I have maybe like 23 views per story, and that's probably my friends. But I get to do what I want. I get to, and if I had more time, if I wasn't like working 80 hours every 2 weeks, like I probably will get more serious and probably find a way to, make it bigger and demand the attention that I think my writing deserves. But if there's nothing out there that interests you, or you're having a hard time finding a job, make your job, because you couldn't tell Jeff Bezos like years ago that he was not going to be one of the world's largest billionaires, but here we are.
And don't just make your job, make your own company. Charlotte Agenda started with $10,000. It can be done.
Yeah. So it is digital, it's streaming, it is content creation, and it is really simple. When I got into the business, in order to broadly cast, you really needed, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment. Like, how many of you right now want to be a journalist? Just raise your hand. How many of you right now have created content that somebody has consumed? Raise your hand. Of you, how many of you have cell phones? Raise your hand.
Bingo.
Okay, so when he talks about content creation, some of the content creation that a lot of people are being asked to do in some way, shape, or form, it's just the stuff that's already on your cell phone. It may well be an app that's already there. It may well be something that you've tinkered with and played with. Podcasting is no more than an ability to know how to go out and gather information, present that information, and an easy way to present that is with the device in your hand. Digital content creation can be as simple as using your 4K iPhone right now to go out and shoot something that somebody else will look at and go, I think I got a place for that on my platform. So it's easier now than it's ever been, and you probably more experienced now than my generation of journalists were coming through school. I laughed at one of the schools. My son goes to a school, and I laughed at the idea that they said, "We don't want you touching cameras until you're a junior." And I went, "Oh, really?" And so my fiance, who's in the business, and I went out and brought my son gear for his iPhone, a microphone, tripod, what have you, and said, shoot what you want, do a lot of it, and just like I said earlier, fail. Right now, you're in college. This is the best place to fail, What, C's get degrees?
You're right, they do.
It's the best place to fail because it's a good fertile ground to grow.
I mean, I have 3 boys, and honestly, we got it this past Christmas. Santa got it for them, but so they have a YouTube channel now. Again, I think there's only 17 subscribers. I think they're all family because I told them to, and on a text like, "Hey, subscribe." My son's going to be excited. But we have all the equipment. They play Fortnite. They watch all these people playing Fortnite and streaming. So, I mean, if you do the math, I mean, think about it. Like going back to Emma with the newsletter. I mean, if you have a newsletter, you get 10,000 subscribers. They pay $10 for the entire year. Say that. I mean, that's $100,000. And you look at your expenses and the margin is very, very high. So it is a very interesting business. It's an interesting time to be in media. And it's one of those where I'm pumped to be in it. And I never thought I would say that. I never went to college thinking I was going to be in media. And it's something that I've enjoyed now for 14 plus years.
Okay, this is the point where we want to invite members of our audience here to join us at the podium and ask some probing questions.
I will speak for some of my students. So I'm a teacher here. I'm teaching media writing and design for communications. And so I know a lot of our majors, I have a lot of my seniors here tonight, are going into public relations, who are going to be having those relationships with the media. So what's some advice that you can give them as they're about to graduate and going on and developing those relationships? What are some good points that you can give them to develop those? And then maybe also speak to the people who are going into graphic design. What can they look at when they're going into media? And we also have a lot of people that are going into videography and broadcasting as well. And so how those careers can relate to what you are doing.
Are the videography and broadcasting kids here?
Yes.
Who are they?
Who are having broadcasting? Back here, we got some broadcasting. I have some graphic designers. Graphic designers, raise your hands. I have some public
Everybody gets a
relations.
job.
Oh, you stood.
I have some public relations people, PR people. Who am I missing? I have broadcasting, and then I have my photographers. So we have photography, photojournalism. So we have a lot of people here, might not be going into journalism like as a writer, but they're all in the field. And so speak to kind of what they can expect.
Can you also think about some of our sports communications?
Sports comm too, we have some marketing.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I didn't mean to all the things, but really I started off with PR and that relationship, but go for it.
Well, I'll jump in for the PR piece because the role that I play, I'm on the fence of editorial and business. And what I tell, especially, and I deal, I think, with just like we all do, every PR firm, not just in the region, but nationally as well, just for us being in 44 markets across the nation. But if the PR, so journalists are like salespeople. They have to build their trusted sources. They have to build their network. When they're on a deadline, their editor's like, hey, I need this on my desk ASAP. You need that trusted source to call. So what I tell them to do is like, hey, I'll make the intro to the reporter you want to be introduced to, but you got to take it from there. What I would say is like, hey, take Eric Spanberg out to coffee. Just be like, hey, I just want to pick your brain. I want to build that trust with you. So, because again, they want that trusted source. So that is the best advice. I know it's it's easy. It seems like so easy, but that truly is it. Just build that relationship. That's what I've learned throughout my entire career. Everything is relationship based and trust based, especially being in the PR world. That would be my advice on that piece.
I would say it really helps to narrow down the list of journalists that you want to build those relationships with. So consider the clients you're working with on the PR side, and then identify the journalists that you think will be the most interested in those clients. Maybe they already report on, like, perhaps you're working with restaurants and they already report on food. Like, those are the journalists you want to spend the most time building a relationship with. And then the other side of that is expect nothing. Like and don't take it personally either. Like, there's just hundreds of emails that journalists might get in a day, and they just simply can't respond to it all. And it's not a reflection on like you as a human being. It's just that they didn't have the bandwidth to respond to that email. I would also say I get sometimes when I say no to a pitch, people ask me why. And it's not really my job to tell a publicist why a pitch didn't land. Sometimes I do, sometimes I genuinely know why. Sometimes I can't really explain why. But I would take that and like you reflect on why and really think about how you can craft a better pitch in the future.
Like, anybody here have a person, associate, who every time you see them, maybe they want money, or they want a favor, or they want something? Anybody? No, just me? That's all? I'm the only person avoiding people? Look, there are two kinds of relationships in every field. There's a transactional relationship, and then there's a real meaningful relationship. That transactional is I reach you when I need something from you. A real relationship is something more than that. And the people that I know in the PR world chat with me, not just when they want something from me, but they'll chat with me, and that conversation also helps to guide them in their pitches. Sometimes it is you feel like maybe it's Earth Day and we need to do something on this brand new technology that's coming out there. Well, that may not be where news is leaning right now. Maybe your Earth Day is our Supreme Court selection nominee day, and it's very different. So understanding that is important. So that's one thing I would say to people in PR. Today I had a conversation with a guy who should have never done this, and I'll tell you this. Interview availability. Don't write that in email. I will see from 8:30 in the morning to about 10:30 emails that say interview availability, something of that sort. This guy had a local story and he wrote interview availability in that line because somebody in PR told him that's what you do. And I just never looked at the email because I get those all the time. And those usually are not local and don't apply to my situation. Once this individual called me by phone and we had a chance to chat, I was able to tell him, I'll probably do that story, but don't ever do that again. I'll probably think of one or two more things a little bit later on, or maybe in the car on the way home, leaving the campus.
I would just say show up, do what you're doing right now, build connections as a young person. When I was in school, we didn't really have a news, like a school paper. However, you would see me in the communications department talking to the two ladies, and I'll be like, "Hi, Miss Brown, how you doing? You got something for me to write?" And it will be for free. However, money will come, experience won't. And I promise you that after you graduate, it doesn't matter. Your degree is a piece of paper. Your experience is everything. And I agree with Emma. Like, if you have something, if you have an idea, pitch it. If they say yes, cool. If they say no, then do it anyways. Like, you're not really going to lose anything by creating an idea and putting action to it. And again, don't be afraid to work for free. Make your own outlets. Make your own opportunities. If there's something that you want to do, but there's not really the opportunity, make yourself available. Come to these things, network with people, talk, ask questions, hint, hint, and just be there. Because as people, you need a degree is great, definitely great, one of the biggest accomplishments of my life. But at the end of the day, without my experience and without being in somebody's door being super annoying, like, you'll know that I'm annoying, but you're going to know my name too, and you're going to know what I do. So keep that in mind and keep going.
I think in all of the fields that you just mentioned, your students are, the biggest thing is just getting to know any publication that you're applying for or that you want to apply for. Like, study, if you're a graphic designer, study what, you want to work for Axios, study what their graphics look like and why you like those graphics. They're very, less is more at kind of Axios, whereas maybe like New York Magazine might have a little bit more like intense, like grab your attention type of graphics. So just really, and if you're a videographer, same thing, study their style and then show off in an interview or in a cover letter that you do really know their style. So just pay really close attention to the details.
Next question.
Okay, so hopefully I can get this out the way I want it to. So when you were talking earlier about media in small bites, I'm on TikTok. I'm on social media, and I love TikTok. I swipe, just like everybody else. But, like, I find myself more drawn to, like, the NPR segments as I do the small sound bites. And, like, the podcast, it seems like all media is going to the 2-minute story as opposed to the 20-minute in-depth story where you get all the news. Do you feel like there will be a circle back around to the long news stories eventually? Because, like, podcast, I listened to 45 minutes on a giant snake, that was discovered in some cave somewhere, and it was just absolutely fascinating. But if you saw that on the local news, you would get giant snake discovered in Zimbabwe, and then off you go, and you never hear anything else about it. So how do y'all balance that? Getting enough information to educate as opposed to just the highlights?
So let me say this: vehicles make a big difference in this, because in my job with National Association of Black Journalists, I am talking to the folks who are in that. So I just met with someone from iHeartRadio. I talked with Intercom, two of the biggest radio producers, and they're telling me really podcasting is it. Everybody's jumping into that area. People want to get more. They want to learn more. They want to absorb more. But if your vehicle's TikTok, then TikTok isn't really meant for us to do that long form. It's really meant for us to deliver those small bites in those areas. So that's where if you're locked in, and this is the problem, this is one of the problems with media now, is if you're locked into one vehicle, to one source, that's just like being on a bus. If your bus only takes you from this side of Gardner-Webb University to that side, then you never know about, what is it, Power, the gym down the street. You never know about that. You never know about the new hotel that was built a little bit further away. You never know about the Shelby High School game. So I will encourage you, if you're interested in more, it's there. You just got to take the next bus. It is there. But what's happening is people are now starting to deliver the information to you in a form that you consume it.
I think all of the best outlets and publications in the U.S. have focus. So, Charlotte Business Journal is hyper-focused on business and C-suite, and, they're very well respected in that, right? Gaston, Gazette's really focused on Gastonia. Charlotte, Axios Charlotte is hyper-focused on Charlotte. And obviously we have the smart brevity aspect, so things are very short, but you still can find a ton of long form at the outlets that do long form best. And same goes for podcasts. I love listening to a long podcast and going down a rabbit hole about snakes too. Like I love that stuff. But I just think you have to, remember the outlets that do that best and keep following them, and find the outlets that do the short stuff best and keep following them. And I think if some place is kind of in the middle, or they're doing both, they might not have a clear focus on like what their audience really needs.
And to your point, I think to answer your question, and probably a long way, but the long form, it depends on, some outlets are going to go to it, and if they realize that they can make money off of it and that if the audience wants it, they're going to continue to do that. But I'll look at, media consumption. It's kind of like if you work out. You're going to want to work out all your muscles, right? Not just, you don't want to be the person that works out their upper body and then forgets about their legs, that type of thing. So you're going to have that where your favorite podcast, your favorite, newsletter that you read. But, is it business to business you want to read? Is it, the local, news you want to read? Is it hyper-focused on a certain thing? So I think it's that mix. And I think the media outlets that do it well will figure out like, hey, long-form writing, this is what we get the, our audience engagement is the most, successful on. So we're going to dive into that a little bit deeper. Maybe cut out on the newsletters because that's not working as well as this piece. So I think it's a mixture of seeing what the business model and the success is based on, the analytics on the backside. But my advice would be, with any type of consuming media, I would look at what you like the best, stick to that in all different forms, because we don't dabble in the podcast game. We've tried. It doesn't work for us. We can put video on our website. It might work sometime, but we know that doesn't work for us. So it's just what works for you and what doesn't, and especially how you consume it as well.
So lightning round will consist of one final question from the audience, if there is one.
Thank you for coming, and thank you for speaking to our students. My name is Vicki Dameron, and I teach videography and photography. And I absolutely love Gardner-Webb, and it's nice to see you. Haven't met you before.
Nice to meet you.
I just have a very simple question. And I'd like for you to maybe help the students. Have a lot of questions about internships. And maybe if you could speak to that. Ken?
Yeah. So,
all of you, but start with Ken.
Yeah, because that's the area I know a little bit better than print. We're figuring this out. COVID really...
No. Internships.
Oh, internship. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what I'm saying.
Okay,
We're
I'm
figuring
sorry.
this out. COVID, there are a lot of people who could have had internships in the last couple of years, but didn't because we're not even together right now. We're starting to get into those again as doors are opening up and as that we're relaxing COVID restrictions. Let me also add this to you. There's never been a better time to be a broadcast journalist emerging where you are. What's happening is everybody's opening up to digital spaces, and they're opening up to streaming opportunities. Um, and at the same time, we're all dealing with COVID and the Great Resignation. I'm working right now on a job fair for students, and I've had companies who are jumping in the boat, saying, "Where do we start? How do I sign up? You know, I want to see." And I'm like, "Students, you sure?" No, these are kids who may not have experience. One, and this is a videographer. This is a chief, a videographer, a photographer in a top 25 market. Told me this in a discussion last week. He said, "Experience is good, but if I have somebody with a good attitude who can learn, I'll take him." Because industry has changed. And to make a long story short, we used to have photographers in every TV market. And so you had people growing and growing and growing and coming into the business and getting a little bit smarter and market 100 and then market 60 and then ready for top 40. And that's gone because they're moving to MMJs. And so there are fewer people to select from at the same time that TV stations and large and small are growing and dealing with resignations. So if you can show proficiency without experience, there's a good chance you'll get hired in a market that you wouldn't get hired in coming right out of college.
And can you just speak on the value of internships?
The value of it's really, having that experience can set you apart. And it used to be that you needed that experience. Nobody would touch you without that experience. You had to have a reel together. You had to be able to go out and show proficiency in some area and be able to demonstrate that to someone before they would consider you. It can still make a difference, because what it means now is that when that opportunity, the window of opportunity opens, is that there's a chance for you to go farther with it, with the experience now. And so if you were leaving college, you were realistically, as a videographer, photographer is a little bit different, still photographer, but a videographer, you could land a good job at it like market 80, and that would mean that you're exceptional. Now you can, like I said, top 25, experience is good, but a good attitude and coachable, you can jump right into, a Charlotte, possibly a Tampa Bay, possibly at a place where they can pay more. And if you're experienced, not only can you drop into it, but you have the opportunity to say, I deserve to get paid a little bit better, which is one thing that the opportunity doesn't always afford you.
Thank you.
Sorry. Believe it or not, I started at the Gaston Gazette as an intern, a full-time intern, and I was in disbelief. My family was in disbelief. Everyone was in disbelief because I just got out of a 2-year program of journalism with my master's, dealing with all sorts of reporters. I've been published since I was 16. I thought that I was hot stuff, guys. Like, I really did. And when I moved back to Charlotte from Boston, I was like, everyone is gonna want me. Like, people are gonna fight over me. I'm so experienced, but no, like, you have to humble yourself. I think it goes back to be present, be determined. If you have to build those connections. Like, I would always ask, do you need this translated in Spanish? I can translate stories in Spanish because it's my first language. I will ask, can I do this? Can I do that? Like, you're talented in photography, ask around, can I take pictures in this event? Like, it'll be free, whatever. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there, and don't be discouraged that internships are what you can get, because in the end of the day, they want to, kind of feel how you work. And if it wasn't for my internship at the Gazette and building the amazing connections that I built, including Ken, who we go to court a lot together, and I learn from him every single day. And I learn from I don't want to say my elders, but my seasoned journalist.
Ouch, that hurt.
My seasoned journalist out there, and it's a lot of fun. So be an intern. You're only young ones, and be persistent. If you can do something, ask if you can do it. Don't say for free first before you
Good
ask.
advice on internships, and I hope you folks will pick a Bulldog intern and welcome a Bulldog intern into your fold. So we're a little past the hour here, and so I'm going to exercise my prerogative to toss the exit question to you and give you about 18 seconds apiece to answer it. We've talked a lot about change tonight. We know that there has been great change to the media in this country at the local, regional, state, national levels. Gaze into your crystal ball. What do you think the biggest change is likely to be in the next 5 to 10 years? Who wants to take first stab? Ken?
It doesn't take a whole lot of imagination to see that people are going to be unplugged. You're going to be using streaming services, and we're going to have to deliver it to you on your time. And no more ask you to wait till 5, 5:30, and 6 to watch it. We're going to have to do better. And that's the biggest change.
Yeah, the way the content's delivered, the way the content's created, and like Ken said, I mean, I think we'll all have about the same answer because, I mean, we could turn around and in 3 months, there's going to be a new way to deliver that. You know, we talk about TikTok. Before that, it was, you know, Vine back in the day. So, I mean, there's just so many things that will
Holograms.
happen. So it's, now I'll talk about a rabbit hole. I'll watch old Vines on YouTube. So, but with that, it's so good. But with that being said, it's we don't know in that regard, but we have to be ready when the consumers, how they want to have it consumed. We have to be ready to deliver on that. And, you know, some of these outlets will create their own way that it's consumed. So I think you'll see a lot of creation, again, with the way the content is delivered and the way the content is created in the next 5 years.
I just wanted to say ditto and then add that if an internship isn't offering to pay you, that's a red flag now. So maybe reconsider that, working for that publication.
And Dr. Downs, I know you only gave 18 seconds, but I did want to throw
Are
this
you
in
going to
there.
yield the
'cause I know-
balance to somebody?
So, being alumni here, I do want to make a commitment. If any of y'all are interested, again, I'm very successful at running a business. I'm not an expert in videography. I'm not an expert in graphic design. I know my strengths. I know my weaknesses. I do have, you know, connections with companies that have that. So I'm more than happy, just like everyone else up here, and I'm sure they would offer the same. But I personally, if you want any type of connections, again, it's not guaranteeing a job. But if you're a videographer, you want to, you know, speak to Spherical Media, you want to speak to Wheelhouse Media, companies like that, I can certainly make that intro for you. And for my career, that would have been the biggest thing, to have someone just open a door for me and then let me take it from there. Going back to, if I fail, I'll learn, I'll get back up and go from there. And like Beatrice says, just being persistent. So that invitation's out there, and I just wanted to share that, obviously being alumni here and what the school has done for me. So it was more than 18 seconds, so I apologize.
And Emma's got business cards, I see. There you go. There you go. Beatrice, last word.
I have to agree. I mean, we're in a digital world. As journalists, we're just trying to move with you. Hopefully, we can do a better job at gaining trust and giving the content that it's going to grab your attention. But yeah, I think that we're just going to be more like what's it called in English? Our presence is going to be a bit more stronger on the digital side, but be sure to hold us accountable. If you see something, say something, you know, bring your ideas. I love when people check me, sincerely. I take constructive criticism very seriously, and if it's something that I can improve to gain your trust a bit more without breaking any of the ethics of journalism, I will totally do so. And I also brought business cards, so.
All right, very good. As we bring our discussion to a close tonight, I want to thank each of our panelists, Emma Way, TJ McCullough, Beatriz Guerrero, and Ken Lemon. We're grateful for your time tonight, for your thoughts, your observations, and the advice you've given to our students. We wish you much continued success in the evolving world of the media and then in the unpredictable world of information politics. And to the more than 35,000 Gardner-Webb alumni out there who may be viewing and listening online, thank you for staying connected with your alma mater. Good night from Boiling Springs, Godspeed, and go Dogs.